Okay, the best kick you ever saw from somebody else. I was like, damn, I can't believe he did that.
It's Adam Vinatieri.
Is it Vinatieri in the snow?
Yeah.
Is it not? Is it not even a debate? The tuck rule game?
Yeah, I think his is 1A and mine is 1B.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome into another episode of Half Forgotten History. Glad you're with us, and we've witnessed an amazing run in this postseason we're in with the Super Bowl set of what it takes to win a playoff game. And most importantly, you better have a kicker. We have seen so many guys deliver game-winning kicks with time running out and everything on the line. So what better time to drop an episode with a bunch of former NFL kickers and a current NFL kicker? Lawrence Tynes, who won Super Bowls for the Giants, Jay Feely, who now does great work for CBS, and current Niners kicker Robbie Gould, who has still yet to miss a single kick in the postseason. Let's take a listen to the kickers and what goes through their minds, knowing they have one job and they better not screw it up. Okay, so all three of you guys are in the top 50 most accurate kickers in the history of the NFL. I don't know if you knew that, with Robbie at the top of the list, at 6th overall at the time we put this together.
That's why he's still getting paid, Trey.
That's right.
That's 100% true. So let's start with you, Jay. When you hear somebody say, kickers, man, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
I just think about those moments at the end of games when no one else wants to be out there and be in your shoes. You know, when you have to go out there and you have to win a game, you have to win a playoff game, you have to be in those situations and perform at the highest level in the biggest pressure moments. You know, and I think those get discounted when it comes to kickers. And it's easy to look at them when they miss and to blame them. And nobody takes that more to heart than each one of us. When you walk in on a Monday after a loss and the entire demeanor of an entire facility is different because of either you making a kick or you missing a kick, nobody takes that to heart more than the guy walking around who knows if I made this kick, everyone's walking around here happy, joyful, we're high-fiving, we're having a great time, but I missed. And so now we're all walking around with our heads down. We don't want to talk, and that's a heavy weight and a burden to bear, but that's part of the position. It's what you embrace.
Robbie, from your perspective, because everyone says you have one job, and it's like, okay, I get that, but a quarterback's one job is to throw the ball, so I guess he should complete every pass, right? How do you try and sort of figure out and navigate and explain to people, hey, I know what you're saying, but understand you're holding me to a different standard than almost anybody else on the team?
Well, I always tell people, thanks for letting me know what my job description is. You know what I mean? We could go through the entire list of players and do the same thing, right? But I think everyone has a job to do. And like Jay was talking about earlier, I think, when you go out there to do your job, it obviously hurts when you don't do your job, because you could play 59 minutes and 59 seconds. But if you don't make that kick, maybe the Giants don't win against Green Bay, or Jay hitting the 61-yarder in Arizona to, put the team up, or you hit a game winner against the LA Rams to kick them out of the playoffs, whatever it is. I mean, those are moments that you live for. And yeah, sure, we have one job and it's to kick a football, but DBs, they're meant to cover a guy and tackle. Offensive linemen are supposed to block a guy and not give up a sack. But the reality is no one's perfect. But I think a lot of it is you just got to put yourself in places during the week to position yourself just like an offense or a defense of player does, to make sure that you're ready to go by Sunday. And obviously you have a game plan just like everyone else does going into the game. But that game plan starts Monday and it ends on Sunday after the kickoff starts.
Lawrence, the problem is, you can't go up to an offensive lineman, right, and say, hey, man, you missed that block, because at the end of the day, that's never going to end well for you.
Never. And one of my favorite lines in pro football is everybody wants to be a kicker except on Sunday. And that's true, because they want our work schedule. But the thing is, if you build the equity up during the week and during the off season with your teammates, right, like you lift with them, you run with them, you sweat with them, that builds equity, because at some point, I tweeted this you're going to miss a kick that, like Jay says, affects the building, affects the organization. But as long as you're one of the guys, and I know these two guys on here with me are, they do the work, they put the work in, guys see that, respect it. So I would tell young guys, do that. Earn the respect of your teammates, because at some point you're going to miss a big kick. That's just the nature of the position. And guys are not going to look at you side-eyed, right? I mean, they're going to respect you. They understand you're one of them. So obviously it's a pressure-packed position, and that's why we all love doing it. I mean, that's what you love, turning around after a big kick and seeing, 30-year-old men act like kids again, because that's the best part about it. That's why we loved it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I retweeted that when you put that out there. And I guess, Jay, are you surprised more kickers don't embrace that part of it? Like, kickers sometimes, training about, they're out there practicing their golf swing. Not you, even though your swing is butter. I know that. And Robbie, yours is too. I want to be clear. I've seen both your swings. But like, are you surprised that more kickers don't sort of understand that part of it and what Lawrence was talking about?
I think they do now. I think if you look around, you go and you look at the number of kickers that have been elected captain on their team. You're not getting elected by your teammates as a captain if the guys in your team don't respect you tremendously. You look at the number of guys that have been chosen to be NFL player reps. Every year you go to the NFLPA meetings, and Robbie and I were there for a long time, and kickers, punters, and long snappers were more represented than anybody else in the league. And so there's a respect there. You're there making the decisions about their financial livelihood for the rest of their lives, and their physical health as well. So there's certainly respect within the locker room. I think it's just how it gets translated outside of the locker room, whether that's former players that played in a different era that have this mindset that's totally different than the guy now. I mean, the kickers and the punters, they're strong as anybody. They're out there. I mean, not Robbie, but like most.
That's what happens when you get 38, Jay. The leg swing slows down a little bit, bud.
Tell me about it. But I think the guys now, they have embraced that mentality. The majority.
Let me just piggyback off that real quick, Trey, because I was at the Monday Night Football game on the field with my boys, and I don't know if you've ever seen Harrison Butker in person.
Oh, my God. Yeah, he's a big boy.
I mean, that dude is 6'4", 225 pounds, and he looks like, 5-10 years ago, maybe now, he could play tight end in this league. Like, he's that –
Joey Sly?
He's a little bit too jacked up for me, but like Harrison just looks like a smooth, sleek athlete that could do anything he wants. And that's kind of where this position has gone.
They're so good now. It's unbelievable.
So what we're saying is there's fewer Jeff Reeds in the NFL. Right? That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. That's very true.
You want to talk about a guy who was out there he was out there.
Yeah, he was fun. He likes. Didn't he get in a fight with a towel dispenser in a bathroom or something?
Yeah, and I think the towel dispenser won. I think on that evening. I'm pretty sure the towel dispenser won. All right, so I'm always curious at the journey, right? Because I know all of you guys are huge sports fans, and you played a bunch of stuff. And, Jay still buys those Schmedium golf shirts when he's out there. He's ripped to hell. But Robbie, let's start with you. When did you realize that your best career path in sports was going to be as a kicker?
Well, I think when I realized I was 150 pounds soaking wet walking into Penn State, right? I mean, I knew that I wasn't going to play wide receiver because I didn't have the speed. I didn't have the size to play defensive back. And quite frankly, I didn't want to get hit either. So as a soccer player growing up, I could care less to play any other position. But I thought, one of the things that was kind of unique is I had an opportunity to walk on at Penn State, which is right in my backyard, and play at a big-time university and get a really good education. So I was like, you know what, if I don't play for a couple of years, I only get 2 or 3 years in. I'm doing something that other people don't necessarily get a chance to do. So I was lucky enough to get a scholarship at Penn State after my first year. And then really, when I got to the end of my career, which wasn't great at Penn State, I was like, let's just give it a shot and see what happens. If I didn't go to New England with Brad Seeley and Adam Vinatieri, my career trajectory would have been completely different in the National Football League. And until this day, I'll always be thankful to Bill Belichick and what Brad Seeley and those guys did for me. But for sure, my career would have been totally different. And I realized then that I was probably only going to be a kicker with guys like Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi and Corey Dillon and Rohan Davey. I mean, Rohan Davey was like a 250
quarterback from LSU. Yeah.
I mean, think about that, right? So that was kind of my aha moments, I guess, to why I would only be a kicker at 185 pounds.
But I'm curious because one of the things you always hear about quarterbacks coming out of the draft, not many of them get more accurate in the NFL as they were in college, and Josh Allen is an outlier, and that Matt Stafford is an outlier. How did you become more accurate as a kicker in a more difficult situation?
The reason I went to New England is because of Adam Vinatieri. He was a guy that I looked up to as a young kicker. I knew that when I went there, I was going to change from a 3-step to a 2-step kicker, which made me a lot more accurate. But I think the pedigree of the Super Bowl culture that they had was really what I learned, right? And I learned what it took to play in the NFL, but play at a high level. And I knew every day I had to go out and compete with Adam, even though I probably wasn't going to get the job, obviously. But anytime you're competing with guys that are the best at your position, I think that's what makes it so much better to go out and be ready to play on a Sunday. Because if I can compete with Adam Vinatieri, I can play in the NFL. That's just how I felt. And here we are 17 years later. I'm sitting in the middle of Levi's Stadium, getting ready to go down to meetings here in a little bit and discuss another tough loss at home. But, I think it's amazing to be able to go out there and want to compete at a high level, but also I hate missing, and like Jay said earlier and Lawrence and those guys, I'm sure you guys would say the same thing. Like, when you come in and you miss, it's different when you come in and make everything, right? Because you're going to dwell on the miss more than the makes. Even if you made a 54-yarder to tie the game, but you missed the extra point somewhere in the middle of the game that you had to have the 3-point, like in the games that you'll see where the extra point you miss, but you make the field goal to win by 2. I mean, you're going to dwell on the extra point, not the one that you made.
Lawrence, you need to tell us about the great Scottish to Pensacola to the NFL transition, because apparently that's the way for kickers. You and Graham Gano, right? Same area in Florida, both came over from Scotland at the same age and both made it to the NFL. It's
a wild story, right? I grew up same way playing soccer. I was a small kid in 9th grade. I was 5'3", 90 pounds. So 6'2", 200 pounds is what I ultimately ended up playing in the NFL at, but I didn't grow until my junior year. So I went back out for football and said, you know what, I think I can do this. I played safety and I kicked. But of course, same thing with Robbie, no scholarship offer, walked on at Troy, close to home, a lot of good football players from my high school that went up there. And, playing in college, I never had visions of playing pro football. I just thought, let me see how good I can be at this and see what happens. And so, I started my journey undrafted in Kansas City. I go to camp against Todd Peterson. I get cut, went to NFL Europe, come back. Chiefs signed me again. I go to camp with Morton Anderson, get cut. I mean, then I said, I need to go to the CFL, get 2 years under my belt, made the all-pro teams. And then I had 7 offers coming out of the CFL. And so I was like, okay, they're offering real money. This is a real deal. I chose Kansas City again because Morton Anderson was 107 at the time. And I knew I could, and he still played after me. So I ended up ultimately, one of the biggest feathers in my caps is that I beat him out. He was still playing at a pretty high level.
We both did.
Yeah. And then Jay did it. And so, Dick Vermeil took a chance on me and playing in Kansas City. I'm forever grateful to the Chiefs. I make my home here. It was a hell of a journey, and it was my last chance. For me, I told myself I'm 25 years old. This is it. I know I can do it, but as the guys will tell you, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. I was getting, I wasn't making any money. I made a little bit of money in the CFL, and I was like, man, I'm going to be 26 years old, and I haven't played in the NFL yet. So that was my last stop. Thankfully, I made it. And the journey began, and, it was a hell of a ride. And Robbie's doing it, still 17 years later. It's incredible to watch.
And Jay,
Trey, real quick.
Go ahead.
One of the things I think that people need to realize with kickers is there's only one kicker on every roster. Right. There's only one punter on every roster.
32 people in the world. I tell people that all the time.
There is going to be, for a lot of people, multiple stops. Everyone here, especially on this call, but there's not a lot of people who get drafted and get to stay on their team for 25 years. It just doesn't happen, right? So I think what's unique is the guys that are on this call literally are the best at their position in the world. Only 32 people get to do it. And if you don't do it at a high level, the reality is you're probably going to get cut the next week.
Jay, you went to Michigan, and did you have aspirations of maybe doing something else besides kicking at some point, or did you always know this is the way?
No, I was a soccer player like these guys. And it's funny because I went the opposite way of Lawrence. I would go over to Europe every summer in high school to play soccer. And when I was over there in Europe, when we were 16, we played Ryan Giggs with Manchester United, who hadn't been brought up yet. And then we played a couple of guys from Tottenham who they were our age, but they were on the Premier League team not playing. They brought them down and they played us, and they absolutely smashed us. And that was the moment I was like, okay, I'm not going to be a pro soccer player. And I came back and really started kind of, focusing on kicking a lot more, and ended up going to Michigan. But very similar to Lawrence, like I finished up my career at Michigan, and I think I'm going to have an opportunity to get into the NFL. And then for 2 years, nothing happens, and I'm doing tryouts, and I went to Kansas City and did a workout for them right before Lawrence did, and thought I'd get signed by them. They said they would sign me, and then they didn't. And then, for 2 years, I'm going to tryouts and trying to chase this dream. And I was at the point where I was ready to stop doing it because I hadn't even got brought into camp, and finally I get one opportunity, one offer, basically, and get to go into Atlanta and compete against Jake Arians, Bruce Arians' son. And I went there because it was two rookies getting to compete against each other. We were replacing Morton Anderson. And, all of a sudden you go from not even being able to get a tryout for 2 years to you're kicking in the NFL. And it took me a couple of years to believe I belonged there, to be honest with you. And you do get better. You get better over time. You learn how to handle failure. You learn how your form gets dialed in more and more. I was way better when I was in my late 30s at long field goals over 50 yards than I was as a rookie, even though my leg wasn't near as strong. But you have a swing that you've ingrained for 20 years, and you can trust it, and you're going to hit the ball. And you think about it like golf. You're going to hit the ball in the club face and the center of the club face each time. And so you're going to get good contact. That ball is going to jump off, and that allows you to be smoother and hit the ball better.
Those first couple seasons before you kind of get that second contract, because 2 bad games, you're gone. We know that 2-3 games. But man, those first 2 years, those were the ones, where you guys all know, like we're undrafted, right? All three of us were undrafted. So it's not like they had any equity in us. So that was the challenge.
Why don't we take a break here? And when we come back on this episode of Half Forgotten History, we'll get into postseason careers for all these guys. And I will debate whether or not they agree with me about the greatest rule change in the history of the NFL. That's coming up next on this episode of Half Forgotten History. This podcast is presented to you by Visa, a network working for everyone. Overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small businesses lead their teams to victory all year long. And Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help their business and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. Back with kickers on this episode of Half Forgotten History, because you got to have one, especially in the postseason. But before we get into that part of it, because the three men with me here today have had some very interesting times in their NFL careers. I believe this with all my heart, guys. And Robbie, I'll start with you. When they move the extra point back 15 yards, it made a play out of something that was not a play. And I know kickers probably hate it, but to me, that's one of the greatest rule changes in the history of the NFL because it opened up a whole possibility of things that could go wrong.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we don't really try to change a lot of rules on the offensive side of the football. Usually when we try to change rules, it's something with the kickers, the punters, or the snappers. I think one of the biggest changes that you've seen on the defensive side of the ball is obviously pass interference calls and hits on any offensive quarterback or offensive player, right? So when they originally did the rule, I was like, why are we messing with the kickers again? Like, seriously, every time we're making a rule, you can't. Now we got to be a yard from the ball on kickoffs. Now we can't get a running start on onside kicks. Now we're going to try to get rid of, like, it's always something to mess with the kickers. But I didn't really appreciate the rule change when it came out. I originally thought that it was kind of punishing us because it was a play that was just too good at 99% to take a game to overtime. And then I started realizing how much changing it to a 33-yard extra point really changed the game. I mean, you can see how kickers now aren't thinking of the extra point as it is an extra point, right? It's literally a 33-yard field goal, which you're going to have a little bit more misses, but I think guys tend to overlook it. But I think it's brought bigger emphasis and I would say more equity to our position because, you want to obviously a solid kicker on your roster to win games, but I think that for sure is a big deal when you go to negotiate a contract is what your extra point is. Now, the question is, how are you going to talk about the greats like the Morton Andersons, the Adam Vinatieris, the Gary Andersons in the same context as the kickers that are going through now. You can't compare them anymore, right? And that's kind of the difficult part of, I think, what that'll look like, especially for the Hall of Fame.
Robbie's setting up his Hall of Fame resume right now. You see that? You see what he's doing, Trey? That Hall of Fame resume, he's setting it up.
Man, I always say no one's got to be a bigger
that.
booster of you than you. So, shoot or shoot, Robbie Gould. Shoot or shoot.
No doubt.
That's right. I love it.
But I think that's one of the most difficult things is how you compare the generations of kickers, just like you would quarterbacks.
Yeah, because
Trey, here's what it did, too. Here's what it did. It not only did it make it harder for kickers and separate the really good ones from the ones that struggle, because pressure is cumulative. So each kick that you miss throughout a year, they build upon each other. The pressure mounts. And so when you add in 3 or 4 missed extra points, all of those add together to build throughout the year. Now you have 6, 7 misses in a year, and you're struggling to maintain confidence, guys are, towards the end of the year. But the other thing it did is it put a bigger emphasis on head coaches to decide if they're going to go for 2-point conversions or not, which was not something prior to that. Because when you went from 99% down to 94%, now two 2-point conversions are basically the same as an extra point. And that's what I didn't think about prior to the rule change, was just how much more strategy was going to be involved and how much more analytics come into that decision. And I like the fact that head coaches have to take ownership of that now. It's so easy to default to the player and just be like, okay, it's on them, go do your job. But now they have to decide, do I go for 2 points here? What should I cut this lead from 7 to 6 by going for 2? And what does that do? I just think it adds an element to the game that wasn't there before.
Well, listen, you and I actually went – hold on real quick, Robbie. Jay, you and I went back and forth on Twitter about this once because you were like, well, the extra point gives you a good practice. I don't want to see a practice play. I want to see a real play,
Well, that's what it was for us. It was an in-game practice. It helped you tremendously. Now, Robbie and these guys, they don't get that. It's much harder.
Yeah, you cannot miss-hit a 33-yarder to make it. You can't.
Yeah, I think –
You have to strike it well every time.
Yeah,
almost.
I would just say to Jay's, I think the original reason for the rule change was to make coaches go for 2 because they want to obviously have offensive plays. But I think you're looking at a league where kickers are actually becoming better. To stay in the league, you have to have a higher field goal percentage. And I think the stress of like what Jay was saying about the misses building up, like you lose a game or two on an extra point, well, they're going to get rid of the kicker. I mean, and they're going to find a guy that's going to do it, and they're just going to keep rotating that window. What's ironic, though, is there isn't many coaches going for 2-point conversions, which I think the rule change was originally meant to do, right? So Doug Peterson is one I know that was big into it, changed the strategy of the game, obviously, by doing that early in the games, but not many coaches are doing it across the league.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned Butker earlier, Lawrence, and he's – granted, a much shorter career than a lot of guys at the top of the list, but he's number 2 right now behind Tucker in terms of all-time accuracy, although with a much smaller sample size of everybody in this group. But, he went through a funk last year. Like, he could make 58-yarders to win games, and the 33-yard extra point, I think he missed like 6 last year.
Listen, the position is 99% mental. It's 1% physical. And the reason – Go ahead, Robbie.
The other thing I would say is he's also getting 90 extra points a year. Yeah. Like there's a bigger sample size.
The sample size.
Last year.
Not this year.
Last year.
Yeah, not this year.
So I think that if we're really looking at like this from a bigger perspective, like he's getting more opportunities to potentially miss, but he also plays in one of the toughest places to kick in the NFL too.
Yeah, Kansas City's tough. And late in the season, that field, as you guys all know, the sand and the slipperiness of it, I hated it. I hated November, December football there because – you guys all know this. Like, when your plant foot's not good, it sucks. And what Robbie did in Chicago blew my mind. I have no idea. Every time I step foot on that field, I peed in my pants just a little bit. I hated. I never had a good warm-up. I was like, oh, my God, extra points only today. And I just never kicked well there. And I didn't play there a lot, thank the Lord.
Lawrence, I hated my career there, played the last 4 games, and I think the only reason Robbie didn't play, he was hurt a little bit, but it was 3 outdoor games at Soldier Field and then 1 at Minnesota when they were playing outside. So
Oh,
he
my
just didn't want
God.
to play those last 4 games. He's like,
I don't
I
blame
think
him.
my groin's hurting a little bit. Jay, you can have these 4 games.
That place is tough, man. Buffalo's fine because it's turf, right? Give me turf
Okay.
and wind
Yeah.
and cold.
All right,
I don't
so this
care.
is interesting because you hear a lot about certain fields, and there's 3 of them that always come to mind about getting beat up more than anywhere else. Soldier Field in Chicago, or whatever they're calling it these days, always is a problem. We know FedEx Field is always a problem. That turf gets beat up.
Tough
And
place.
also Heinz Field, because everybody uses that stadium.
Sure.
Is that accurate to say those 3?
Cleveland.
I would add
Cleveland.
Arizona in there. As funny as that sounds, Arizona has one of the worst fields in the NFL.
Now, that's interesting. Why Arizona?
Do you remember the Hauschka misses? Remember that game where it was like 29 yards or something,
Every
and
year,
they were missing?
Every year Hauschka missed
late.
there. Yeah.
I think it's just the sandy base,
so did
man.
Phil Dawson. There was a lot
Phil,
of guys.
the
It's in
sand
November,
is brutal.
So they switched the field out in December. And so it's those November games that are always tough there because that field it doesn't grow and, it just gets kind of sandy and nasty.
Well, they also have training camp on it in the beginning of the year. So, it doesn't get any rest, right? So I think, between that and trying to grow grass on plates in Arizona in December, as crazy as it sounds, it's cold. It doesn't grow as well as other places. But Arizona is one of the softest fields I've ever, and probably one of the hardest places to get your plant foot to have good contact on a ball. So to see guys like Jay and Matt Prater and, those guys having a lot of success in that place, I have a lot of respect for them, even though it's a dome.
I mean, grass in Arizona, good for putting greens, not good for kicking. That's basically
Right.
what we're learning.
How many dome games have you guys played in? Because I was looking the other day, someone reminded me I played in 11 dome games in my entire career.
That's it, huh? Wow.
You guys would all know this because you're Giants, but the hardest divisions to play in is the NFC East and the AFC North.
Yeah.
All
Makes
because
sense.
there's not
Agreed.
one game other than if you play Dallas. But I think, you're outdoors in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cincinnati. And then if you're playing for the Giants, you go to Washington, Philly, and then you hope to God December's in Dallas.
New York.
Yeah. So,
Washington is
the
a
first
challenge.
That's the first thing I always did when the schedule came out was look at December. Like, okay, where are my games going to be in December? Hoping I had some dome
Well, I saw
games
the
in
Giants
December.
are in Soldier Field in January. I'd be sick. I'd have COVID-19 that week.
I tell you, it's interesting you say that. Like, you hopefully play in Dallas, because one of the weirdest kicking games ever took place in Dallas in November in '93 in the ice storm, the Leon Lett game, when Pete Stoyanovich just kicked for the Dolphins, was blocked. And then everyone's yelling, Peter, Peter, poison, poison, which means stay away from it, stay away. And here comes Leon Lett, comes in there, touches the ball. They come in and they kick the field goal again, and they go on to win the game. Although, as a Cowboy fan, thankfully, that was their last loss of the year, and they went on to win back-to-back Super Bowls. But we don't need to talk about that. I'm here with you guys to talk about your postseason
Many years
careers.
ago.
Lawrence, let's start with you, because obviously, as a 2-time Super Bowl champ, you have a lot of great memories. But to me, when I think of you in the postseason, I think of the 2007 NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field, because there's 3 things I remember from that game. One, Tom Coughlin's frozen face. Missing a couple of kicks, then going out there and kicking the game winner, and obviously the Brett Favre interception in overtime. So as a guy where it's rock hard as a surface, and you're trying to do things and basically kick a freaking refrigerator, the ball is so heavy in conditions like that. Tell me about your mindset when you've already missed a couple, and then you get an opportunity to make it all better.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge that night. I mean, that's the most difficult conditions I think I've ever played in. I knew it was going to be tough because in pregame, we traditionally kick about 8 or 9 kicks on each side. And after our 4th kick in the first half of the warm-up, Jeff Fiegels could no longer catch the football. So we couldn't kick. His hands were numb. He couldn't catch the ball. So we just said, you know what? F it. We're done. We're just going to ride it out, figure this thing out. And so we didn't get a lot of, obviously warm-ups. You can't really prepare for those conditions. You just have to kind of rely on your technique and say, I hope to God I make all my kicks. We started out 2 for 2. We missed one middle of 4th quarter, missed one late. But I had a lot of confidence in my miss from 43 with 8 minutes left in the 4th quarter. I hit it really good. And I said, man, I could probably make one from 50 going that way.
Really?
That's why I ran out there.
It's funny you say that because
overtime.
I'm like, he ran out there. I think before Coughlin made a decision, right? I think you wanted it.
Well, listen,
you
I was
wanted
going
to
to
take it out of his.
Trey, I was going to be in the bottom of the Hudson River if I returned to New Jersey and missed another kick. I was like, I have to go out here. I felt good about, the last one, the operation was a little off. So in my mind, I said, you know what? That's not my fault. So I played a mind game with myself. I hit the 43 well. I just didn't start it far enough down to the right, and I missed it left. So I knew if I could get that ball started, we get a good operation. And Jay Alford was our snapper, and Robbie probably knows him from Penn State.
I played with him at Penn State, yep.
Jay Alford was a D tackle who converted to a field goal snapper when our snapper got hurt. So we didn't get a lot of work with him, but credit to Jay snapping in those conditions. We got a great snap and hold. I knew I could make it. So for me, I wasn't really nervous to say, but I just wanted to make amends. And I knew, to be honest with you, I was on a 1-year deal. If I don't make that kick, there's a lot of things that happen. A, I could have been out of the league for the rest of my life, or B, I just don't resign and no one ever hears from me. So you just have to have so much belief in yourself. But, it was an unbelievable moment. I think about it often because it gets brought up all the time.
Listen, Jay, there's a million things I could talk about with you, but I want to get to the 25-point game because as a kicker, that's a pretty cool card
Best
to play, right?
time.
For those that don't know, in the 2010 season against the Denver Broncos, the Cardinals won 43-13, and Jay alone beat the Broncos with 25 points. You had 5 field goals, 3 extra points, and you scored a touchdown. That's kind of hard to top, right? Like everybody else can have like a Super Bowl ring or this great kick. You got 25 points?
I'd trade it for a Super Bowl ring.
No, Jay, I'm with you on that one.
Right? You have to lean into it. A 25-point game.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, here's the funny backstory is I actually had a groin injury for about 5 weeks during that time period. And I didn't practice at all for a 5-week period. Literally wouldn't practice all week and would just go out there and play in the game. And we had that fake in 3 or 4 different times during the year where we called it and we didn't get the right look. And so we checked out of it and just kicked the field goal. And we come into that game and we get the right look and we run it. And I ended up scoring a touchdown. But I didn't even practice I didn't kick one ball that whole week in practice. And here we run a field goal, a fake field goal, get a touchdown. I had Tordell going. I was feeling good in the game. And, back in the day when you could do that, you'd feel good. You go out there and you play. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is I didn't miss a game in my career. I was able to play through every injury.
He just called both of you soft, by the way. Just want to throw that out. He just called both of you soft.
Yeah, he did.
No, I think. Listen, one of the things.
I just missed 3 games. I get it.
Hey, one of the things with kickers is we know, like, you miss a game, you might not get back on that roster. And for the way that I started, the way these guys started, I think I knew my entire career that I was very replaceable, and that if I gave somebody an opportunity, I might get replaced. And so, whether I had to drag my leg with me, I wasn't going to leave that field.
I think the other thing on that note about injuries is that if you get hurt, most likely you're not going to IR, which means you're taking someone else's job. So, as a kicker, you don't want to. Those are buddies in the locker room. Like they have families, they have kids. So, like you try to play through as much as you can. Unless you really can't swing, in order to make sure that those guys can still make a living.
And Robbie, with your postseason career, it's interesting because you've been to 2 Super Bowls, albeit many years apart. Super Bowl 41 with the Bears and Super Bowl 54 with the Niners against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Both of those games, you felt like you were going to win, right?
Yeah, Indy was interesting because I didn't feel like their special teams unit was going to play as well as they had. I didn't think their defense was going to play as well as they did. You were just like, at some point it's going to fall apart. And Peyton Manning played an amazing game. He didn't do
worst Super Bowl weather ever. And it was in Miami. It poured the entire game,
the entire day too. Like I was like, are you kidding me? We're getting the biggest game of the year, and I'm still in bad weather. But I just remember Peyton just, throwing the ball 5, 4, 3 yards, guys making plays. And then they did the pick 6, and I was like, the game's over. The one in Kansas City, when we go back to Miami to play, our first punt of the game came with like 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And we were up 10. We're feeling good, playing really well against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. And then things just kind of went downhill at the 5-minute and 45-second mark. That one's going to sting for a very, very, very long time because that's the one we should have won.
Porn star Jimmy's got to make that throw, though. He's got to make that throw.
But you could go the whole way through it. I mean, you could go through the wasp play that we practiced a bunch and we let them go deep. I mean, there's
change the game.
It takes a whole team to really lose a Super Bowl, in my opinion. There's a lot of things. There's always one play in every game that changes, and I think that obviously the wasp play was the one that kind of kicked it down the road, because then they went on to score like 21 points unanswered. But I enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed the second one more than the first one because it was my second year in the league. I had no idea. I was like, oh, this is easy. It's my second playoff appearance. It was just my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. Now fast forward, 15 years later, and I got 3 kids. I'm sitting in the hotel room before the game, playing catch with my boys, not even thinking about the game, like just enjoying, like, just being in Miami again. Like, am I going to get the shot to win a Super Bowl? And then we get done with the game, and my middle son, who's always my biggest critic, is like, Dad, you lost the Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? You let Patrick. So like, to add like gasoline. To the fire,
I was playing defense on 3rd and 17 with Wasps, son. Come on, man.
But a lot of people don't ever get a chance to play in a Super Bowl. Yeah, I'd love to have won one of those. Hopefully, I can win one before I leave. But I mean, I look at a guy like Jason Hansen, who played in the same place, who I have a lot of respect for. Is one of the greatest kickers in the history of the game.
Phil Dawson played in Cleveland. Like, I mean, these guys, are not getting the chances like a Mason Crosby or a Harrison Butker, Justin Tucker early in their career, right? So, those are guys that I wish they could get an opportunity to experience that, because I do think there's something to running out of a tunnel during a Super Bowl. Now, I don't know what it's like to hold the trophy, Tynesy, but I'm sure you enjoyed kissing that thing twice.
It's wild, man. I'll tell you, I've never been more nervous, to your point, than the first one. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't take it all in. It was a blur. But the second one, the kids were older. I had been there. I enjoyed it more. I remember it. But, man, there's nothing like kicking in the Super Bowl, Robbie. You know that. Like, every kick matters, right? And then on Tuesday, first question you get is the Scott Norwood question.
Yeah.
It is. It's the first question you get that week. And you say, look, I know what I signed up for. I always had his back. I said, Scott Norwood was a great kicker in this league. He missed a 47-yard field goal on grass, wide right. I get that. I said, but you guys are discounting, you discount what he did. He was a good kicker. It's just everyone knows the story, and you answer the question. You say, look, I know what I signed up for. And that could be you.
Poor Hold.
Here's what's crazy. Like, one of the greatest kickers in the history of the game was Nate Kading.
I'm so glad you brought him up, because he could not miss in the regular season, and then got into the postseason, and it was he was a totally different dude.
Like, Doug Bryan was the same way. I mean, I had a lot of respect for Doug, because I came in to Chicago and he was there. And I remember him playing against the Steelers and had a tough game, and then the Jets kind of moved on. But, like, those are games that, no matter how great your career is, kind of define your career. It's kind of weird. Like, and then it's a matter of how you rebound from whether you make it or miss it. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. You see it every year in the playoffs. Billy Cundiff's another guy that comes to mind. You know what I mean? Like, here's a guy who played for a long time.
That's a great point, Robbie. That shouldn't be on Billy Cundiff. Like, that whole situation where, especially with Harbaugh being a special teams guy, they rushed him out there. I believe they had a timeout, right? If I'm not mistaken, they had a timeout, and he rushed that kick. And guess what? That was the game I'm watching on the Jumbotron in Candlestick right before I'm about to play in the NFC Championship. And I go, oh, no.
Right. So that was things that was things I learned as my career got on. Like, I would take a delay on my own.
Well, I would have called a timeout. I felt comfortable enough in my own skin. If I know we had a timeout and I'm rushing something, I would have went just like this.
I did that a couple of times too. Or just take the delay, move it back 5 yards. No big deal. Let me be set.
That's a big mistake on Harbaugh's career. I think being a special teams guy, rushing him out there, knowing you had a timeout, I just don't get that. And I could be wrong, but I believe there was a timeout remaining.
Well, we'll check into it, and if they didn't, we'll edit out that entire discourse. I tell you what, Why don't we take a quick time out here, our final break, and we'll come back with a couple of rapid-fire questions for Robbie Gould, Jay Feely, and Lawrence Tynes on this episode of Half Forgotten History. Stay with us. Hey, everybody, here's a sneak peek in what you can learn by watching Trey's Trends each week on the Caesar Sportsbook social media and YouTube channels. The matchup for Super Bowl 56 is set. The NFL will crown a new champion for a 17th consecutive season when the Rams and Bengals square off at SoFi in Los Angeles Sunday, February 13th. Caesar Sportsbook has posted its odds for the 285th and most important game of the 2021 NFL campaign. The Rams opened as 3.5-point favorites over the Bengals before moving to 4.5. The total for the game now 49 points. Recent Super Bowls have turned into dog shows, however. Underdogs are 8-6 straight up and 9-5 against the spread in the last 14 Super Bowls. That's the most outright wins for underdogs over a 14-game span in Super Bowl history. Though the Bucs defeated the Chiefs last February, AFC teams are 6-3 straight up and against the spread in the last 9 Super Bowls. To begin the season, the Rams were 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, tying for the fourth lowest odds with the 49ers, Packers, and Ravens. The Bengals, well, that's a different story. They began week 1 as 125-1 odds to win the Super Bowl, tying for the Jags and the Jets for the third longest odds. The Lions at 200-1 and the Texans were 250-1. The last team to win with 125-1 or greater preseason odds and win it all was the Super Bowl in which the 1999 Rams, the greatest show on turf, took it home despite being 150-1. Kurt Warner led that Rams squad to a title in his second NFL season, something that Joe Burrow is trying to do now for the Bengals. Find more of Trey's Trends at Caesar Sports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube with new episodes dropping every Friday. 21 or older, 18 or older in D.C. must be physically present in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Washington, D.C. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Ohio, and Utah, and other states where prohibited. Know when to stop before you start. Kickers. You don't love them unless you got to have one, and I've got some of the greats with us here on this episode of Half Forgotten History. So let's do a couple of rapid fires real quickly. Robbie Gould, best kick of your life. What was it?
Oh, man, 49 yards against the Seattle Seahawks. The Chicago Bears hadn't won a playoff game in, I think, 11 years in 06. So I would say that was probably my best one. And then my second one I'd have to put up there would be the Tennessee Titans here at Levi's Stadium, where we went 6 for 6 on the day and beat them to help knock them out of the playoff run a little bit. So those are my 2 favorite kicks in my career.
Jay Feely, what about you?
Game winner at Philly, overtime, after I had my awful game for the Giants and Saturday Night Live did the spoof about me.
That's
and
amazing.
They called timeout to ice me during the game, and they played a montage of all my misses on the Jumbotron at Philadelphia during the timeout.
It's so Philly.
And you're trying not to watch it,
Philly.
trying not to look at it, trying not to listen. I know if I miss this kick, I'm getting cut the next day, and my career is probably over. So to make that kick, and then the next 9 years of my career, I didn't miss another game winner. So I think going through that Seattle game, missing and experiencing failure helped me to overcome that fear of failure.
Tynesy, what about you?
Probably the 2 NFC championship kicks, the one in Green Bay and the one in San Fran. I mean, those are pretty easy to pick out. I had, my first game winner of my career was my rookie year against the Raiders on Christmas night. And that was really cool to get your first one, right?
Yeah.
At night. I mean, you miss on Christmas Day. Holy cow. At home in Arrowhead. So I probably have those 3 up there on my list.
Tynes, my first game winner was December 21st or December 23rd, my rookie year as well.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, kickers are like elephants. You guys remember everything. Okay, now let me ask you this question. Okay, the best kick you ever saw from somebody else. I was like, damn, I can't believe he did that. Gould, let's start with you. Is it Vinatieri in the snow? Yeah. Is it not even a debate, the tuck rule game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the best.
I think his is 1A. I think his is 1A and mine is 1B.
Robbie?
Just to be humble.
Do you know the only other one I would put up there would be Justin Tucker, his 66-yard field goal. I think
that's just
the guy's
ridiculous.
never missed a game-winning kick in his career, and I mean that's a pretty big-time kick.
Well, I'm glad you brought up his name because we're all competitive, right? And you're still going. But at the end of the day, like it's hard not to look at Justin Tucker and say he's
the best that's ever done it,
right?
Yeah,
right.
I don't think there's any question in my mind. When you look at he's got more seasons over 90% than he does under 90%, which is just ridiculous. Like, you're trying to have 1 or 2 years where you're over 90% in your career, and he does it every single year, and he's kicking long field goals. It's not like, they don't kick long field goals. Harbaugh will be content to kick a 55-yard game winner and not try to get extra yardage. What he does is so spectacular. I'm just so impressed by him.
Here's what I'll tell you about Justin. He has all the intangibles. He can hit every specialty kick. He can kick the ball deep. He can hang it on kickoffs and keep it in play that helps them on special teams. He's made every big kick. I think the other thing you have to look at in his career, which, I'm very thankful that he has Harbaugh there, is he's had the same holder his entire career.
Yeah.
And
Robbie, I'm so glad you brought that up, Robbie. That is so important. Like, that operation he has is flawless. It's like kicking in practice.
I did a special on it on air on CBS and just showed how good, Morgan Cox was there for a long time. He's not there anymore. But, the snap was always perfect and the laces were great. And Sam would get the ball down perfect. And so he could see it and he could be aggressive. And the way they did their job allowed him to be as good as he is.
Yeah, and I think if the other thing you look at is he's also doing it in Baltimore. Again, in the AFC North, we talked about how hard that is. Every week I go through and watch every special teams game. We do reports on every kicker, kind of goes situationally, just something pops up. He's by far the best to ever do it. There's no doubt about it.
No question.
Wow. Well, we'll see how his career progresses. Guys, this was a lot of fun for me. Like, kickers are always sort of this weird fraternity. You guys are some of the best to ever do it in some of the greatest situations of all time. So I appreciate you being part of this. And remember, you always say you don't need a kicker until you need a kicker. Once again, thanks to Lawrence Tynes, Jay Feely, and of course, Robbie Gould, still the most accurate postseason kicker in NFL history, for joining us. We'll see what happens with Robbie's career going forward. But coming up next, the Rams are in the Super Bowl, and we've got a very special guest that knows a thing or two about the Rams franchise winning the Super Bowl. That is wide receiver Torrey Holt, who's also a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll talk to him next week. We'll see you then.